Hello and welcome in to the Sidelines Radio Show here on Okali Radio. I am your host, as always, Skylar Wolf, along with my sports reporting partner in crime, Chris Notch the Notch. How are you doing today, good sir?
Can't complain. Doing fairly well. As we always like to joke in the sports world, it's Thursday, or in the student world, it's Thursday, close to the weekend.
Very true.
But no, doing well. Glad to be here again. It's always fun.
Yes, absolutely, I agree. And we've got a really good show for you guys today, at least we think. We have XFL talk. First week is in the book, and it was actually a rather interesting weekend filled with maybe a little more storylines than people originally thought. The games looked good. Everything was kind of pristine and polished in a way that we hadn't really thought of. So we'll get to that. And then we also have OSU men's basketball talk. Got their second conference victory here last Tuesday. I'm going to talk about the struggles of this season, why maybe it is. We can't maybe decipher why we're struggling so much and what needs to change, and then what happens for the future with the big star recruit coming in next year. And then we'll do a brief NBA All-Star Weekend talk. We talked a little bit about it last week. We're just going to reaffirm kind of our predictions and our thoughts and go through just one more time, just since it's this weekend right now up close. And then if we have time, we'll get to Myles Garrett was reinstated into the NFL yesterday. A lot of people may have forgotten back last season, halfway through the year, against the Steelers, Myles Garrett swung his helmet and hit former OSU quarterback Mason Rudolph in the head with it and created this whole media firestorm. And a lot of things got blown to the correct proportion and some got blown kind of out of proportion. So we're going to kind of try to rein it in, and now that he's reinstated, kind of see where we go from there. But we're going to start with the XFL. And before going in too deep into the games or into any of the stats or into anything, I just want to give a general impression and get a general impression from Chris. Did you watch any of the games this weekend? Did you sit down and get a chance to see any of them?
I did not. Part of that was my own choice. I have nothing against the XFL by any means. I'm just even with NFL, I don't mind football. Don't get me wrong. Even college football, I enjoy watching it. But it's not my go-to sport, I guess. So I'll keep up with it.
Right.
But XFL, from what I've heard, though, from people and the stuff I've kind of looked into, I mean, it sounds like it turned out really good. They had a really good opening week. The biggest thing is you're going to look at it and go, okay, can you sustain it? Everyone said the same thing about the AAF. Everyone's like, man, okay, this is good. I think we're going to sustain this. And they were done within 5 games into the season. It was over, or whatever it was. I think that's going to be the biggest thing of, can they sustain it? Now, it helps when you have Vince McMahon and the WWE backing you up.
A lot of money behind that.
Exactly. So that helps because they have the capabilities and to use sports athlete terms, the cap space to be able to do it. The collateral is a big thing for them.
Right.
And they can do it. So I think it's helped. And I think what the XFL has done well is the way they've branded themselves. They know going in their identity, what they're trying to do. They understand they're not trying to be the NFL at all. Hence why when it comes to if you score a touchdown, the 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point whole ordeal.
Right.
They are not trying to be the NFL. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to try and find different ways. I have seen some people, though, on social media going, they should do the best team from the XFL has to play the worst team from the NFL. And if the XFL wins, they get to go and the NFL team moves down like English Premier Soccer League.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Where they do that as well. So which I was kind of enticed by because I was like, okay, this is interesting. The only problem is you're dealing with different organizations and different leagues because there's different rules because XFL is okay with betting.
Right.
They are embracing it.
Yeah.
Again, they know their identity. They're embracing that part of the identity, which is good. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to know that.
And sports betting brings in its own share of revenue that is astronomically high. The amount of people that bet on, the Super Bowl just outside of the NFL just alone kind of helps with viewership and stuff like that. So it's the same thing here with the XFL, and I agree with that. My biggest takeaway, because I didn't watch all the games, but I did watch a couple of them, In particular, it was the I believe the New York Guardians game in which they kind of just beat down and blew out and really took it to the Vipers. I believe it was the Tampa Bay Vipers, and the Tampa Bay Vipers uh, were the team of like the talk of the town, right? They were the team that was supposed to, you know, be better, be the better team. They had the preseason predictions of that was going to be the best team, and then the Guardians come out there and just smash them, and it was hardcore football, and it looked good, it sounded good, it had this pristine sort of sheen over it. It you brought up the AAF and how it crashed and burned by week 4, I believe it was, and yeah, we said the same things about it, but this feels different. This feels more, excuse me, NFL production right? This feels higher scale almost because with the AAF, you had, you know, kind of some of the access that we have, and then you had, yeah, the football, like the plays and everything was basically some rule changes, but a lot of it was similar. The XFL, like you said, is purposely standing alone and purposely trying to separate themselves from the NFL. You brought up the betting briefly, and that was something that I wanted to talk about. The whole sustainability thing, because that's what everyone's talking about with the the XFL, excuse me, is the sports betting side of it. The fact that they are hardcore embracing it, that on their bottom ticker, they actually have the over-under total points scored for the game, and they have which team is favored and by how many points it is. Like, that's something the NFL probably will never, ever do, right? But this league's like, you want to bet on us? Go right ahead. In fact, we'll give you the over-unders. We'll give you everything. And that, I think, just is easier to access for fans that maybe want to get into sports betting, especially like people that have never done it and they just want to get into it. Because, sports betting on NFL games gets really costly really fast. The XFL can serve as maybe an alternative of like a slightly cheaper option for people that just want to try it out maybe.
Well, and you pointed to viewership, and that's what betting does for you. If you've ever been, if anyone's watching or who watches later, if you've ever been to Westgate, any of the Vegas casinos that have basically live betting, I was fortunate enough last year. I went during March Madness, and the amount of people that not only are at these casinos that are watching the games, but like when you have money invested, like that's and it's an open thing where you're like March Madness is one of those things where people know you bet on it, and that's just how it is. Like it's not an under the table type of betting, But when you, as a league, allow betting, you don't restrict it. It allows for, again, I think you hit the point of viewership. I think you're gonna have more people invested and going, okay, especially that first week. I bet viewership had to be fairly good, at least in the beginning.
The entire the 1 week of the XFL, I read this somewhere. Actually, I got this stat from a good buddy of mine who's been keeping up with the XFL hardcore. His name's Brian Bass. He actually used to go here. He's a good friend of mine. He has the stat where in the first week of the XFL, more people viewed it and more tickets were sold than the entire 4 weeks of the AAF combined. More people showed up for this than any of the AAF games by a long shot. So I think viewership is kind of already there, right? Mm-hmm. It's already kind of past what we may have expected.
However, though, there's also the double-edged sword to it. Can you sustain it?
Right.
There's the excitement first week. Great. I'm sure the AAF still had a fairly good first week. But again, a lot of it goes back to me at least, the identity. Obviously, we know what the XFL is about. And I think that's where you got to watch as well and go, okay, can they sustain what they're trying to do? And can you invest? When you have the capital, you can invest in yourself, and that's what it takes to run a business. Anyone that runs a business or manages one knows in order to make money, you also got to be willing to spend money on your own product or whatever helps you succeed. And I think that's what the XFL is going to also have to do here and go, okay, we realize we're going to have to, put some money down here or there. But I'm interested to see how successful this first year is.
Right.
And then even after that, okay, can you sustain it? Is the XFL going to be one of these leagues where, rule changes are a little easier to do? Right. NFL, for the most part, the rules changing is pretty rare. And if it happens, it's something that it needs to happen. Like it's like penalties, all that type of
Right.
stuff.
Most rule changes in the NFL are either small or something that was because of the previous year was so up in arms about. So
Yeah.
that's very true. The one thing, and this is something that I wanted to bring up, just as kind of an overarching thing for the XFL that I personally saw in these games that I really, really liked, and something that I wish the NFL would do, is simply the access. You get so much more access to the players, to the coaches, to the sidelines. Both sidelines have a dedicated reporter who is on the sideline the entirety of the game. Their whole job is to find players that they can talk to, or find a coach that they can talk to, or find an ex-NFL player who's at the game to talk to, in the case of Pat McAfee and Troy Aikman having their own little podcast, it seemed, on the sideline of one of the games. I really like the fact that you have the ability to access that. And then they also had cameras on the field. On field goals, they have a guy with a camera 3 feet behind the kicker. That's just something that's an angle, a shot. That's something you don't get to see in the NFL. And then the last thing that really, really kind of sold it for me was when they review plays, they have a camera and a microphone in the review booth. They show you what the review official and the head official on the field are discussing. They let you listen in and hear why it is they came up with the decision that they did, what led them to that. And that's something in the NFL we never get as fans. We are always sitting there listening, thinking, oh, that's clearly a catch, or oh, that was clearly a touchdown, or oh, that was clearly an interception. And then they come back and they're like, no, it wasn't. Well, what did you see that we didn't see? Now we actually get to see and hear that with this league. And I think that's something that it has going for it that will make fans kind of go, that's really cool that we get to see the access. We get to actually hear and understand what these people are thinking with the league. I think that will really help. At least it helped with me day one. So I'm imagining there must be others like that out there as well.
Yeah, and I think you bring up good points with camera angles and being on the sidelines. It's just a more unorthodox style.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm gonna, beat it in everyone's heads. Basically, it's literally their identity. I think when you're in the XFL, not to say players or young individuals are not going to look up to these players. I'm not saying they won't, but I think the XFL is going to give off a different vibe when it comes to the athletes themselves. And maybe it helps because some of them just weren't good enough to be in the NFL, or you have like Landry Jones, who was a fantastic quarterback at OU.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best, if anything. I know it's weird to say here at OSU, but to kind of give him his dues, like one of the best to play in college.
There was a reason why he was drafted in the second round, I think. He was an excellent quarterback.
But, and so I think that's great when you're basically like, hey, this is how we're, when you build the culture, the chemistry of this is how things are run here, everyone's on the same page. Now, not to say some of these XFL quarterbacks and players and coaches aren't going to go, hey, like they feel like they're entitled to certain things. I don't know if their salary's as good as an NFL. That I don't know. I don't have the top of my head. I know you're kind of giving that look like you don't either, which is fine.
I don't think it is, to be honest with you.
Because if you can make them more human, if that makes sense, because you look at an athlete in the NFL, any professional athlete, most times as a young adult, you grow up idolizing. It's like the whole Kobe thing. When Kobe died, everyone, comes out, all the outpouring of support, and I idolize them, which fine, which is great. I idolize Kobe. I idolize Kevin Garnett. I'm very open about that, and that's just how it is. That's how I grew up in that time. But it'd be very interesting to see if you see Landry Jones and go, man, I idolize him, or if he's more personable because he's like, oh, I'm just a player. I'm just out here having fun. Taylor Cornelius, former OSU quarterback, is a backup on the Vipers in Tampa Bay. Like how much I really am curious for society's input of how does a person view a football player in the XFL? Is it the same as someone in the NFL? Or not. And if it's not, it's fine.
Right.
But that's something that's very curious to me of the diehard followers of the XFL if they turn into like, oh man, like I would give anything to meet him. Or if you're like, oh, you're just playing like the the JV team of the NFL. You know, like I don't
Right,
know.
right. Like it's according to this article that I found that came out just 5 days ago. The average XFL player salary is around $55,000. So a normal, probably as you would consider at least a normal yearly paying job.
Yeah,
Kind
mid-level
of
job.
right, exactly. And so it's clearly money wise, it is not meeting the size of the NFL. Granted, it's in its first year, and this makes sense. Top players apparently can make up to around $250,000 with incentives and bonuses. And I think I read that the coaches can make somewhere around $500,000. That's around maybe where it's at. So, with that being said, that's still a sizable chunk of money. Like, there's no doubt in our minds. Granted, it's not the 5 year, $25 million contracts that you get in the NFL. It's not the, 4 years, $69 million with 56 of it guaranteed that you're going to get in the NFL for some of the players. It's just not like that. So, because of that, there is definitely the, I guess, gap still you can consider in like, oh, I want to go play for the XFL versus, oh, I want to go play for the NFL, right? That definitely still exists. But at the same time, I had a friend of mine bring up to me the idea of what if the XFL turned itself into kind of like a developmental league for the NFL, kind of like how the NBA has the G League. When he asked me this question, I initially said, I think it's a bad idea. Because while if they did that, the NFL would probably help out with funding, and therefore they wouldn't have to necessarily worry about the funding and running out of money as like quickly as they may originally have to. The whole idea of the separation, right? The fact that this is the XFL, not the NFL, and they don't want to be the NFL, that goes completely out the window. And then all of that access, all of that, ingenuity, all of that marketing, the sports betting, everything, the things that are just making the XFL what it is, go away. And it's not the XFL anymore. And so I think that's a bad idea, but it was an idea that was brought up to me that I wanted to get your take on. Do you think a developmental league is kind of maybe where they should turn, or do you think that should be a last-ditch effort, the money's running out, we got nothing left to do sort of thing?
I think it's maybe. I mean, really, if you think about it, in the big four being NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL, the NFL is the only league not to have a developmental type of league. You have the G League, you have your farm system for baseball, you have a farm system basically for hockey as well. Hockey is the exact same way as baseball. That's why so many people are drafted in the MLB and NHL, but not everyone has a chance to actually go pro because it's still hard. Like, it's great if you're drafted in the MLB, but like if you're drafted in really late rounds of the MLB draft, usually you're probably not. Every once in a while, you're gonna have a few that get up to the big leagues,
but otherwise you're gonna be stuck in single A or double A.
Yeah, either spending your life in the low or high A or double A. Maybe you make it to triple A, but if you can really get there, and so maybe that's a good idea to try. The thing is with NFL, and maybe I don't know if this is the reason why exactly, but if you think about it, an NFL player's career is the only career, in my opinion. You could put basketball up there because of knee injuries and jumping and freak accidents. NFL, though, is one of those things where every single time your career could be ended after each play. Now,
Absolutely.
not to say baseball and then hockey don't have the same things, but there's something about football when your main priority is to make contact with another person, whether, usually it's not supposed to be head first, but sometimes you do, but that constant hitting someone, trying to tackle each other, that can your body hold up? So if you do a developmental league, you look at running backs. I don't think running backs would benefit very well because I think if you're a running back, the best ones are going to get signed right away and go pro.
Right.
Like they're going to make the draft and either carve themselves out, something or not. But as a running back, I don't think you want to spend half of your career in the G League, in a developmental league.
Right.
Because at that point, your body's still getting beat up just as much as if you're in the NFL.
And you're not making the money that you would be making.
Right. Which, to be fair, is the exact same thing. Anyone that's maybe watching or watch this go, yeah, but that is how baseball, G League, any of that is. You're at risk of injury. You're right. But again, as I was saying before, your object is to not make body-to-body contact consistently. Basketball, yes, you kind of rub elbows, you kind of bump into each other.
Right.
I understand that when especially when you're in the paint. But your primary focus, just like hockey. Hockey, yes. Is there fights? Is there crashing the boards? Oh, yes, there is. There's bumps and bruises.
Right.
Just like baseball can have them if you get hit by a pitch. But again, most of the time, your risk of a life-threatening or career-ending injury is a lot smaller
In these other sports.
yes, than it is again in a developmental league. I mean, like I said, I think if anyone's going to benefit, it would be a quarterback. I think especially for quarterbacks, because quarterbacks are so hard to really find.
Right.
But what's the other thing you look at is what's going to separate a player in the G League, because you look at experience. Someone go, you know what? He just needs more time. Let's send him to our developmental team. They'll get him going. They're going to get him better, more comfortable.
Right.
But a lot of times, in order to get them comfortable, you need repetition. You need game action.
Right.
You look at some of these quarterbacks, Marcus Mariota. People thought he's actually going to have a pretty good career. He's fizzled out. He just you couldn't send him to a developmental league and get him any better. Not this far in. Now, I understand. Like maybe you have regulations. Maybe you go, okay, we're going to draft you, but the longest you can have him in a developmental league is like 2 years.
Right.
And then either you got to bring him up,
Or you got to cut him.
or he's gone, and then some other team, because it's just, in a sense, I think either a player, especially in the NFL, because you have to be in the league for 3 years, or you have to play in college, or just 3 years out of high school,
Right. Before you can even think
can think about going pro. And so I think your time window for developmental things is smaller, because again, if you're a Marcus Mariota, I think is a 6-year pro, or would be going on,
right.
Because I think they came in 2014.
Yeah, with Jameis Winston.
Yep. That, okay, if we still haven't been able to fix you, and it's been 5 years, what's going to say it's going to get any better?
Exactly.
But that was my rant.
No, I get it, and I agree. Real quick, just to wrap up the XFL talk and move on. Is there any specific thing? Is there one specific piece of advertising? Is there one specific idea that they need to accomplish? Something that they need to do to where they don't crash and burn by week 4 like the AAF did? Is there one thing in your mind that they need to do that it can get them over the hump, so to speak, minus the money, because the money is always an issue. If the money runs out, then of course it runs out, but that's kind of a cheap out. Is there just one thing in particular?
Really, if anything, it'd be just to stay relevant, like marketing ploys would be the big thing to, I think the XFL did a really good branding thing, and this is an underrated thing in my opinion that I don't think people always think about. In this industry, I think you do a little more if you're a marketing PR person, you will, that what season literally just ended right before this started?
Well, the NFL season.
The NFL. What is the XFL style based off of as a sport?
The NFL.
The NFL. Like, they could not have done this any better, where they literally gave fans about a week off to kind of transition from, if you're Kansas City, you're celebrating the Super Bowl, or if you're a Chiefs fan, for that matter, you're celebrating the Super Bowl.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, a week later, and you're like, oh my God, football's back.
There's
It's
football
not
in mid-February?
NFL.
What's
Right.
going on?
Because the NFL season is always kind of short as it is, and this weather talks about extending to another game, which the Players Association is like, like, we don't want to, like, what's that going to benefit?
Right. The latest one I've seen is, we're going to shorten the preseason to 2 games, and we're going to add a 17th regular season game, which to me is like, what's the point then?
Well, because half the time in the preseason, your starters don't play all that much as it is.
Yeah.
So what do you...
Get rid of all preseason,
yeah.
or just have one preseason tune-up game, get us back into shape, and then add the next game on if you want.
But I think that's what it's just branding. Can you market? Can you keep things fresh? And yeah, money's the obvious cop-out, one answer to it, but I would say it's a branding thing. Can you keep it relevant? Can you keep making changes to kind of almost take opinions?
Right.
If you get feedback and they're like, oh, we don't like this, we don't like that. Okay, can you take that and change it and critique your side of things and make it work?
Right.
Because that was part of the AAF's problem. They didn't change.
No.
Which, I mean, most sports you really don't, but I don't know. But
When you're a league that's just starting, you need to be able to take feedback and turn it into positive change. Because if you can't and you stay stagnant and nothing changes, then the fans that were originally there are going to instantaneously be gone. Because they're going to be like, well, we've spoken and nothing's happening. And unlike the NFL, where it already has 100 million built up viewership, that it doesn't matter when 4 people say we want that changed. This kind of does matter in that regard. And I agree with you that the marketing and also I think the sports betting, I really think that's where the
Yeah.
money is going to be made for this league. The fact that they're embracing it so heavily, there's so much money to be made. It's an unfathomable amount of money to be made in sports betting that if they can stay in tune with that, I think not only do they have Vince McMahon's backing, which we know is very affluent, then you get Vegas's backing, and that's when it's like, I think we're set.
Yep.
I really think that's where it is. So that's all for the XFL talk. We're going to move on now to basketball, and we're actually going to start with OSU, Oklahoma State men's basketball. Got their second conference victory this past Tuesday against Kansas State. Both teams, Kansas State and Oklahoma State Cowboy, moved to 2-9 in the conference play. The Cowboys are 12-12 on the season, and basically the whole idea behind this conversation with Chris is that we are both Oklahoma State University students. We both enjoy basketball. We both thought at the beginning of this year that this team wasn't necessarily going to be great, but that it was going to be okay. We thought this would be an okay season, and it's turned out to be not that. After a hot start in which OSU, I believe, started out 7-0, they are now 12-12. They went on a 6-game conference losing streak, and they are now 2-9 total in conference. And it is just not turned out the way we thought. And the biggest question I think fans have, at least people that I've spoken to, is why? What happened? Where did this decent defensive team go? Why are we playing like kind of how last year when this team was very little experience, really wasn't gelling together? They've had another year under their belt. They've had another set of practices. They had another off season. The question was kind of just like, why is it not working out? And I guess tossing it over to you, Chris, why is always a loaded question. There's a million reasons why, but is there one specific thing that you can pick out and kind of go, this seems to be an issue? Because we've been following this team all season now.
So I'm going to back up. So for one, I don't want to say I was a minority in this one or this was fully my thought, because it's not fully the case. But I wasn't fully sold on this team to begin with. I think there was the excitement because of the mere fact of how the team did last year with not having much of a roster and just the fight and the growth that Likely and Yorane had. Now, of course, you look into this year, Yorane has struggled with foul trouble, just being consistent as a whole. It seems like him coming off the bench has helped him a lot, and starting Laurent in his place has kind of worked for now. But to me, the biggest thing is, and if you're an OSU fan and watching this or looking at it later, OSU's just not that good roster wise. They just don't have a strong roster, and you talk about 2-9 in the Big 12, and they wins against K-State and then TCU, and they should have beat TCU the first time because TCU is not that good either by any means.
No, and put it in perspective, K-State is 9-15 right now. They are worse than OSU.
Yeah, and you bring up how the Cowboys started off 7-0. They won the NIT 2019 season tip-off tournament, and everyone was like, "Oh man, here we go! Like we got our team finally. This experience from last year, all the hardships, it's paid off." But then you deal with
Georgetown.
Well, Georgetown, but I'm just talking about within roster changes again. You have to kick off. Is it Watson?
Yeah.
Watson's basically gone before he's even here. You just have this turmoil in a sense, and these distractions that can be a problem. But honestly, when you look at that roster, top to bottom, there isn't really a huge group of guys on there that fully scare me. Now, again, I think you have your core. Your core now is Isaac Likely, Yorane, and no offense to Keelan, but more of Caleb Boone.
Yes.
And probably Avery Anderson. I think that's like your core. Because the thing, I don't know if it'll happen, but technically, if you look at next year, you got Kate Cunningham coming in, as you mentioned. And, okay, how does the gelling work with when he comes in with Likely and all of them? And, who's really around? Because, after next year, yes, you're probably going to lose Cunningham almost instantly unless something bad happens and he's got to go, or he's got injured or whatever. But, maybe there's a chance Isaac Likely tries to leave depending on the year he has. I just skill-wise. And now I'm going to say something that a little off the rockers. A lot of people are not going to be okay with what I'm about to say here.
Got a Chris Notch bomb.
But where we're at, 12-12, 2-9 the Big 12, the chances of us even making the NIT is very slim.
Yes.
Okay, the NIT is a lower version of the NCAA March Madness tournament for anyone that doesn't know NIT.
Yeah, very small, much lower.
And there's less teams invited. If Coach Boynton, he's getting there, because I've seen it, you've already taken DeZagua out of the starting lineup and put him as more of a role player, because that's, no offense to Thomas DeZagua, but he is a role player by trade.
Yes.
He has always been, I think, envisioned as a role player. He's just not a starter.
He is the guy that can come off the bench, give you instant 3-point production, can give you about 10 to 15-minute stretches of good play, but between his defense and his lack of ability to get to the free throw line, really anything other than shooting the three, and no offense to him, it just lends himself to being more of the bench kind of guy.
Well, and his game's very one-dimensional.
It is.
You talk about free throws. Him crossing the 3-point line with the ball is pretty rare.
As a whole.
Yeah. And, and as students and stuff, you always kind of joke like, oh, he's got that. He's afraid he's going to get sick if he crosses a 3-point line. Like he can't cross that line. But I think what you have to start doing, you want to, of course, give credit to your main three who have stuck through the mud and everything else that they've experienced in the big three, or the main three being Waters, DeZagua, and McGriff.
Yeah.
And you want to thank them for what they've done, because they have done a lot and to be committed to staying here. But it's time to move on.
It is.
I think you have to slowly, and like I said, we're seeing it with DeZagua kind of getting less and less minutes. Avery Anderson's been getting more, and people aren't sold on Avery Anderson. And I think it takes time. It takes reps. I mean, the leaps and bounds that Yor and Isaac even made during the season last year from the beginning to end was massive.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the playing time they got. And I think you have to start cutting your losses and looking and going, okay, you know what? We're not going to make the NIT. We're definitely not making March Madness, the NCAA tournament. So I think we have to start looking towards the future, start building. And I'm not saying don't play Waters, DeZagua, or McGriff at all, but I think you have to start going, okay, you know what, Waters or like McGriff, you're going to become our sixth man. Right. And it's hard because there's not a lot of post player. Like the depth chart is not able to work that way, because McGriff does need to be on. And now he's not the greatest defender. Even offensively, he's not consistent.
Right.
But he's a big body, is what you like about it.
Yeah.
But I just think you have to start going, okay, you know what, Waters, you're going to be our sixth man. We're going to start, playing Likely, Anderson. Maybe you're giving Chris Harris Jr. more minutes when he's comes back healthy. Caleb
Boone's going to get more.
You got to give him more. Because you even look at like Laurent. Laurent is a 1 year. He's a rental.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gone again.
And he's gone. I think they need to give Hitty Rusink another chance.
Hitty Rusink, yeah.
Because you're talking about a 6'10" guy that can shoot threes with the consistency of anyone on this team. That's really good talent, and he's a freshman. He's from, I believe it's Denmark. He's a really talented young guy, and when they were recruiting him, Coach Boynton, came on and told everyone straight up, like, Rusink has the chance to be something really special if we can just develop him into that. Here's the time. You're 12-12. You're 2-9 in conference. You're not making the NCAA tournament. You're probably not making the NIT. Here's the time for the development. Give them the chance. Because like you said, Laurent's gone after this year. Lindy Waters, Cameron McGriff, and Thomas DeZagua, I believe, are all seniors. They're gone after this year. So that leaves Likely, that leaves Yor and I, that leaves Anderson, Boone, Harris, Rusink. Basically, that's your group now moving forward. And then you add in, you briefly brought it up, you add in the number 3 overall recruit in the country, according to ESPN, coming in the next year. Cunningham is an interesting kind of player, right? 6'7" point guard who can play the 2 and the 3, who can guard basically the 1 through 3, really 4 in college, because 4s in college are not that big, usually at least. And I think that adds like another layer, right? That kind of adds a developmental layer to this team where it's got, all right, you got the role guys who, if they can like defensively kind of manage, and then you have Cunningham who can kind of run the show. But then you have, guys like Isaac Likely, where the only real knock on him, well, the only true consistent knock for his entire career has been the fact that he can't shoot well. And that doesn't mix well when you have a guy like Cade Cunningham coming in who's probably going to handle the ball. Because when you're playing off ball, you kind of need to be able to shoot from the outside, because if you can't, then people aren't going to respect you.
So you're saying you think Cade's going to be the point guard, or he's going to play off the ball?
Well, I think Cade's going to be the one handling the ball.
See, now I'm opposite of you. I think because of Likely not being a shooter, you have to have him be the point guard, for the fact of Isaac Likely. He is, for anyone that has not seen him, he is actually a very solid built athlete.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he is built very well.
6'4" and built like a truck, like strong guy.
But being he's a run to the rim type of guy, I think that's where you need to have him with the ball, for the mere fact of others. If you're a defense, Cade Cunningham, let's say his high school game transitions very well to the college level. And that's what you hope, especially with him potentially being a one and done. Right. You hope his game transfers over very well.
You hope he can score you 23 a night and get you 7 assists and 5 rebounds.
But he's going to be more dangerous off the ball for the fact that he can shoot. Because if you're a shooter and you have him off the ball, your defense still has to focus. That defender, if you're Isaac Likely, you don't have the ball and you're on the 3-point line, that defender's not going to pay you much attention. He's going to dare you to shoot it because he knows you can't shoot. That's in the scouting report.
Right.
And so I think you hinder yourself if you have Cunningham bring the ball up. And I think you got to almost run, whether it's like a pick and roll thing or whatever, with maybe Isaac Likely and Cunningham, you're a Nate, something. Really what they need is if Hiddy Rusink, this would be the perfect example, is if he can get his game to transition better in college and really come to form better, and you do a pick and roll scenario with him and Cunningham. Because if Hiddy Rusink can hit threes, which he has shown the capability of, and if Cunningham can do that, it's like a pick your poison.
Right.
You go under the screen, Rusink's just going to pop, step back, 3 or whatever. Like it gives you so many different options. Now, again, this is more talking, hoping that all this works out. But I just think if you're the team, you got to have Likely be your point guard, because he just can't shoot unless you can get his mechanics worked out.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that makes more sense, but at the same time, I just think Cunningham is going to be the guy next year, right? Because it's clear that on this team right now, Isaac Likely is definitely, I would consider, to be the leader of this team. And if not the leader in terms of scoring, because he's not, Lindy Waters is our leading scorer, only by 0.3 points, though. Isaac Likely is the point guard right now. He's the guy that runs the offense, runs the team. And I get that. But when Cunningham is going to come in, he's going to be the guy, right? He steps on the court, and instantaneously, he's the best offensive player we have.
So what you're telling me, I agree with you, Likely has the keys to the car right now.
Yes.
I fully agree with that. What you're telling me is that Boynton's going to go to Likely next year and go, hey, I need those keys back. It's time to get it to the freshman. You've given us 2 good years, and you've grinded out, you've committed, you've stayed with us, but we're going to have to pull your keys for this freshman prodigy that we hope can take us to the promised land.
No, I'm not saying it. Oh, that's a really clever way to put it. I'm saying it's going to be more like a, hey, share the car with your brother kind of thing.
But if Likely's getting the ball taken out of his hands altogether, because I think that's what you got to do, because if not, somehow to give Likely his touches per se with bringing the ball up, you'd have to then do it. One of those two is going to have to rest at some point,
right,
to keep them. Then you're looking at a minutes thing, which is kind of whatever. But I think that's the key though too. Okay, you share. Okay, how much are you sharing? Is there certain plays that are like, hey, we're gonna run like out of this set, Cade's gonna be the guy because the way we can get these 4 plays mixed into the same set, how we set you guys up, this will work great. Or if we have Likely, we've got 4 different set plays we can do, something like that. Okay, sure. I don't know Isaac Likely, obviously. I don't know how he would take it. It's obviously, it's part of the business, part of being basketball,
Right.
being a leader, when you can be like, you know what, you're right. Here it is.
I gotta do what I have to do.
I'm willing to do whatever it takes to provide for this team. But I don't know. To me, that's just I understand the one and done thing, but I think because of our school not being known for a one and done, and
Not at all.
I don't know the last time we've had a one and done.
I can't.
Because Marcus Smart was here for, I believe, 3 years. For
Right.
sure, 2. Juwan was here for at least 2.
Right, and then before him, even Markel Brooks was here for, believe, Markel Brown was here for all 4 years, I believe.
Tony Allen was here for, I think, 3. Big Country was here for at least 2.
LeBrian Nash was here for all 4, I think.
Yeah, like we've just never been that school. We've never jumped on the hype train of Kentucky, and granted, our recruiting class has never allowed us to do that.
Right.
I don't know if they would just be like, hey, you know what? We're going to try this one and done.
Right.
I
guess
because I think a lot of it too. I think a lot of it's going to depend though. How does his game transition?
Right.
If his game doesn't transition, he ain't going to get the keys to the car.
No. I guess in my mind, in the way my brain works, the way I'm envisioning this is like Cade Cunningham brings the ball down the court, and then they run like a high screen and roll action where Cade Cunningham has the ball. Excuse me. He is dribbling. Isaac Likely comes to run behind him. He hands the ball off to Likely and immediately screens off Likely's guy. Likely bursts to the hole, and then they have a back screen cutting like you and I, or someone else cutting from the back screen. Just actions like that where they're almost using Cunningham as a distraction more than anything else. Because once Cade is done screening, he's going to turn and roll to the basket too. And now you have both of them going, and then you have the back screen. There's just not going to be enough bodies there to cover everyone. So in my mind, I'm envisioning Cade handling the ball a lot, but it's not because it's taking it away from Likely. It's more like hey, there's ways that we can set Likely up, and there's ways we can set other players up if Cade is being the focal point, right? That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
There's one other thing, and then we can move on. The only other thing is, can you surround, besides Likely, and we know yours not someone that's going to stretch the floor that far.
No.
Can you surround Cade Cunningham with basically one other shooter?
Yeah.
That's because whether it's Chris Harris or Avery Anderson, unless Likely, like we mentioned, can get a shooting touch and can hit from deep. I mean, I don't know who the next best three-point shooting guy is for percentage-wise besides DeZagua, because I know DeZagua is a fairly good percentage, but with a decent amount of three-pointers taken, not like 3 for 5 throughout the season, 75% or whatever type of thing. Like, I see you have the roster up. Like, who's really shooting? Who's got the second best 3-point field goal percentage?
The second best 3-point percentage right now is actually Caleb Boone's brother, the guard. He's taken 32 3-pointers. He plays about 10 minutes a game. He's hit 11 of the 32, which comes out to around 34%, I think. So he's statistically the next best shooter. But even he, 10 minutes a game. He's only taken 32 on the whole season. There's 24 games, so that's less than or just over 1 a game, right? And he's hit 11 of them. So he's not playing enough time to really say if that'll be the consistent, idea.
Right, and because that's where, again, I think if Cade Cunningham is able to hit the threes consistently, I think that's where you have to have him play off the ball just because he's a shooter. Because if we've seen it before, pros and college, if you are the only shooter on the team and no one else, if the rest of that team is going to clog up the paint because they just can't shoot,
Stagnant.
Yeah, that's where you almost rely on a team to completely. You got to motion, like how the Warriors, especially when they won in 2014-2015 year, watching how fun it was to watch them just run. Klay Thompson didn't have the ball, Steph Curry, and they were still running around. That's what you need, especially if you're not a 3-point shooting team, because you can't get stagnant. And if you've got Cade Cunningham doing a one-on-one, kind of a solo act right here. Okay, we're going to take my man 1-to-1, and you have the rest of the guys clear out. Those defenders are just going to clog the paint, and they're just going to help defense. Because if you don't have any shooters around you,
what difference does it make?
Yeah, they're going to dare you to shoot.
Right, and if you can't hit them, which at that point you can't, You can't score. The half-court offense just becomes stagnant. We see it in the NBA. We see it with the 76ers sometimes with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons being together. Neither of them really able to shoot threes that well. Embiid's shooting, I think, around 33% this season. But Simmons won't even take them.
No.
And so it stagnates the team. The half-court offense becomes slow. And in the NBA, where you only have a 24-second shot clock versus the 30 seconds you get in college, it just doesn't work. And it's the same idea here. So quickly, we're going to move on to staying in the realm of basketball, but move on to the NBA. And we're going to briefly go over the All-Star Weekend again. We talked about this a little bit last week, so we only need to take like 5 minutes for this and just kind of reaffirm what we believe is going to happen. They did draft the two teams since the last time we were here. We have Team LeBron and Team Giannis, as it's been for the past, 2 years now. And Team LeBron, just looking at Team LeBron up and down, you've got Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, Luka Doncic, James Harden, Devin Booker, Ben Simmons, Nikola Jokic, Jason Tatum, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, and Domantas Sabonis. Before even going over the next team, which is Giannis's team, that team is probably chalked with the top, 5 most talented players in the NBA right now, without question, minus Giannis.
I would say top 5 that made the All-Star team, because I think you have a healthy Steph Curry. He's in the top 5.
Okay, that's fair. I'll give you that.
I Paul George is not there either. And now I'm not saying he's a top 5, but like
Paul
I'm
George
just
is a really
saying,
good player.
I'm just saying, like, are the 24 guys that have made it? Yes, you look at LeBron's team, and he has for sure the top. He has 4 of the top 5 that are playing on Sunday night, this coming Sunday. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
And then you have Team Giannis, which has Joel Embiid, Pascal Siakam, Kemba Walker, Trae Young, Chris Middleton, Bam Adebayo, Rudy Gobert, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry. Good for Kyle Lowry making another All-Star team. Brandon Ingram and Donovan Mitchell. Good for him, too, after last season's struggles, kind of coming back with a roar. Clearly, the names that I just read off, there is a bit of a differentiation. I think LeBron took who's the most talented, and Giannis took who would be the most fun to play with. I think is kind of how they may have done this.
I think it's a mixture. I will say I loved the debate they had. It was between so for anyone that did not watch it, I watched it after it was done. I watched it a couple of days later, and it came down to the starting 5. Giannis had his last pick, and it was between Trae Young and James Harden, I believe, for the starting 5 spot. And they're like, "Oh, okay, who are you going to take?" And Giannis was like, "Well, I want someone that's going to actually pass me the ball."
Yeah.
And so he picked Trae Young.
Yes.
Which I thought was great, because LeBron starts laughing. Kenny and Barkley, all of them just laughing, because they're laughing at the fact that it's true. That they're like, I don't care what you say about James Harden. He's a phenomenal player.
Absolutely.
But like the whole, oh yeah, I want a guy passing me the ball. Truth, man. Like truer words had never been spoken.
Yeah, yes.
Obviously, you look at those rosters and you named them. Team LeBron is stacked.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
But I think you hit a point with LeBron's got the players with the most skill, I think, or some of the best in the league. What excites me about Giannis's team, he's got a group of scrappy guys that you could say in their careers have always been looked upon as maybe never good enough to win a championship, aka Kyle Lowry.
Mm-hmm.
He can't work with teammates. He's toxic, Jimmy Butler.
Mm-hmm.
And
who seems to be working just fine in Miami this year.
And that's what I was bringing up, is to the point. I think you're going to see a Giannis team that, although they may lack the overall ratings of better than LeBron's, they've got the heart, more of a scrappy team. Jimmy Butler, there is a fantastic article, and someone that did not care for him, and a lot of it is because of how the whole Wolves thing shaped out and whatnot. They did a phenomenal article on him being a Heat, and how Dwayne Wade had told Eric Spoelstra when he came back after Wade was traded from Cavaliers back to the Heat, and said, he's the next Heat. Like, he's got that attitude about him all right over. Bam Adebayo, first-time All-Star, has
Absolutely
blossomed with Jimmy Butler.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was quoted in it, too, saying, he's our leader. We understand. That Heat team is a grit and grind.
Mm-hmm.
They are putting in the work all the time.
They
Duncan
are the
Robinson,
Cinderella team.
Yeah. And so just looking at that roster, Kemba Walker's on there. A bunch of guys that have almost, you could say, are overlooked, not seen as the guys that can get you to win the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, or really any of the quarters. I think a lot of people are going, this is going to be Team LeBron all 4 quarters. They're going to take home all $500,000 to their
respective charities.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think it's funny, not to turn this into the Heat podcast or Heat podcast or show or whatever, but real quick, just to point out, the Heat do have someone in literally every single category for the weekend. They have a guy in the three-point contest in Duncan Robinson. They have a guy in the slam dunk contest in Derrick Jones Jr. And then Bam Adebayo is also doing the skills challenge. So I think that goes to show that this team is built up of guys who mesh well together, who gel well together, and who are very good in what it is they are doing. So, like I said, real quick, we're just going to run through the All-Star Saturday night rosters and kind of give our last-second predictions. Real quick, just to go for the All-Star game, I am still going for Team LeBron because while I love the grit and heart and grind, I think when it comes down to we got to score 124 points in the span of an untimed fourth quarter, so in the span of 30 minutes. Who do I want to do that quicker? I want the guys that have the ability to put the ball in the basket in ways that we've never even seen before. I love the heart and I love the grit and I love the grind, and I hope that they get a chance to show it all off. I still think that LeBron's team is just going to be too much at the end there. What about you?
I do agree with you. I think for me, I would love to see Giannis's team win because I think so many people are going against him.
Right.
That that's what I like. I just want that because I would love to see it. I will say, whose team is Damian Lillard on? Is that LeBron? Or is that... Yes, it is LeBron.
It was LeBron.
It was because he's called him Dame time. Devin Booker, of course, is replacing Damian Lillard. That was just announced today. So, I think it'd be very interesting because you look at Team LeBron, you look at Devin Booker now, you had James Harden, a lot of shooters.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much playmakers, but shooters. Damian Lillard is a shooter. He's a shoot-first type of point guard.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with it. He has a lot of success with C.J. McCollum and the Blazers team. But just because you did LeBron, and I really do I'm going to go Team Giannis.
Okay.
I want Giannis to win.
That's fair. I guess my only comeback to the whole, they have a lot of shooters, not a lot of playmakers, is my next comeback to that would just be, you have Luka Doncic and LeBron on the same team.
No, right.
That's insane. And you want to talk about playmaking ability, and then Ben Simmons too, who doesn't even take shots.
Ben Simmons is overrated.
You heard it here first from Chris.
I'm probably not the first person you've heard it from. He's not. I'm not sold. I'm not sold on him and Embiid being able to stay together.
Oh, that's a topic I think for another show. So,
well, it is. Just like Tobias Harris is a really bad contract, but
that's very true as well.
Yeah.
We'll get to that probably. That might be a next week conversation, depending upon how this whole next week goes. For the All-Star Saturday Night rosters, we'll run through this really quick. The three-point contest, we went over the names last week. Trae Young from the Hawks, Zach LaVine from the Bulls, Buddy Hield, Duncan Robinson, Joe Harris, Davis Bertans, Devontae Graham, and Devin Booker replacing Damian Lillard, as we just mentioned. Since Damian Lillard was my pick, and he's now not there, I have to make a new pick, and I'm going to go with Devin Booker. Because, one, he's replacing my pick, and two, I've seen Devin Booker shoot before. I've seen him shoot in person. Just practicing one time, I was lucky enough to live rather close to Kentucky for a little period of time, and I actually got to see him just do a shoot around. It's when he's in the zone, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. So I'm gonna go with him.
Fair enough. I'm pretty sure I said Trae Young.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna change anything. I would have been like you. I would have just swapped out being Lillard is out and Booker's going in. I'd be like, I'll just take Booker because, as you mentioned, when Booker sees a few go down, it's
unreal. This guy did score 70 points in 3 quarters and a half. So, slam dunk contest. It's Dwight Howard, Aaron Gordon, Derrick Jones Jr., Pat Connaughton. I'm pretty sure I picked Derrick Jones Jr. Last time, and I'm probably gonna stick with that just because he climbs the ladder in ways that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I'm gonna stick with Howard. I just a throwback. Just give me a throwback Dwight Howard moment. I hope he whips out that Superman cape. I think he will. I think he's gonna go very retro style.
Oh, absolutely. He's gonna play on the fanfare for sure. I think.
Or he'll wear instead. He might do Superman cape. He'll probably wear a Kobe jersey, which I think a lot of people will do a Kobe style dunk thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
definitely.
Proceed.
And then the skills challenge. You have Jason Tatum from the Celtics, Pascal Siakam from the Raptors, Bam Adebayo from the Heat, as mentioned before, Domantas Sabonis, Patrick Beverley, Chris Middleton, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is replacing the Pistons' Derrick Rose, which I find very interesting. You know, we live in the state of Oklahoma. Neither of us are originally from Oklahoma, so I think because of that, we're not really huge OKC Thunder fans. We don't have any real want for them to necessarily be here or to win here necessarily. But I personally am going to switch mine from Spencer Dinwiddie to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the simple fact of I actually really like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I liked him when he was drafted with the Clippers. I like when he got traded here. Everyone in the state went nuts. They love him here. He just, that 6'7" long, lanky, snake-like frame just reminds you of like what a really good point guard in today's day and age can be. So I'm gonna go him simply for the fact that he's in there now and I like him so much.
I'll stick with Jason Tatum. Like I said, I'm not gonna change much. I'm with you. The thing is, as a Timberwolves fan, not to say I hope the Thunder have problems for all eternity. I'm not that big of a rival with them, even though we're in the same division, in the Northwest Division. I mean, because I have friends back home now that are like, I bet you're a Thunder fan, aren't you? And I'm like, no. I'm still not a Thunder fan. I could live here the rest of my life. I still ain't going to be a Thunder fan because I don't know. I think when you grow up with something for as long as a person does, you just go, nope, that's always the Celtics for me. I'm a Celtics fan, and that's because of Kevin Garnett. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I idolized Kevin Garnett, and when he went to the Celtics, I fell in love with the Celtics. I still keep up to date with them the best I can. But, Shai Alexander reminds me kind of MCW, Michael Carter Williams.
Oh, okay. Better.
Well, the funny thing is, for those that don't know, real quick, Michael Carter Williams won Rookie of the Year. Was fantastic his first year.
He had like 17 points a game.
He disappeared.
Yeah.
No one really knows where he's at. Now he's in Orlando, for those that are actually wondering. But, I mean, he's just a role player now, which is crazy because he was 6'6", fantastic ball handler. I mean, and I don't know. He's just gone.
The lack of a 3-point shot, I think, really hurt him as a guard. I remember his rookie year, he averaged 17 points a game. I think he was averaging 6 assists and like 6 rebounds a game, like the ultimate triple-double point guard threat. But he only shot 29% from the three. Yes, these are numbers that I remember because I remember having the same feeling about him as I do Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. A 6'6" point guard, long, lanky, like can snake his way to the rim all he wants. Awesome. He has this great rookie year, and then nothing. Shai has luckily not had that fall off, and hopefully he won't. His 3-point shot's much better too, so he's kind of built more for this game. So we're running out of time here. Only got a couple minutes left, but I guess real quick, just to go through the last thing we talked about. Myles Garrett was reinstated into the NFL yesterday. He served his suspension. I believe it ended up being, was it 7 games? Ended up being total, 7 or 8 games,
something like that.
being total for his hit with Mason Rudolph with the helmet. He got reinstated. He's officially back in the NFL. He's free to go to training camp, free to go do spring trainings, whatever he needs to do. Punishment enough? Do you think more time needed to be spent? Do you think, is this a freak accident, just one guy kind of doing it? Do you think this is resolved? Do you think that now that this is all behind him, he served his time, do you think we're okay? Do you think this is good?
I'm fine with it. I think he's served his time. Not to say it's not going to be very chippy when the Browns and Steelers play next year. I think that's something that the refs will know and keep an eye on.
Yeah.
I do see that. But no, I think it's fine. I mean, you know what? I'm not defending him, but I'm also not going to be like, you know what? Yeah, you should be done forever. Heat of the moment, after you really let it sink in, you know what? It happened. It's time to move on. Don't dwell on it. Just go, you know what? He lost the last 7 games or 8 games, didn't play. I'm fine with it. Move on.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Myles Garrett has been considered one of the most mild-mannered players of all time. He doesn't talk. He is very quiet. He's kind of reserved. He's not a guy that is overt or angry or anything of that nature. So I really think this is just kind of a freak accident sort of thing. I think we'll be fine now.
Yeah, and I think if anything, real quick, because I know we have just a few seconds left. I think if anything, you got to watch. If you're the refs, you're going to warn Myles Garrett, Mason Rudolph, everyone. Hey, no dirty business when you guys play.
Right.
Like
that's the first thing you're saying to them.
Yeah. Even as an organization, you're telling them, nope. Like
none of that.
You do anything like that, done.
Immediately.
Gone.
Yes.
We'll see you later.
100%. I agree. Especially on an NFL level where it's that large, and you've got so much going on. So, but that's all the time we have today. This is from KOSU and the Sidelines Radio Show. I'd like to thank you all for listening in. I'd like to thank Chris, as always, for joining me. And we'll be back next week, same time, same kind of content. And we hope to see you guys then.